Hello, everyone. This is Justin with another crossover moment, I'm going to call it. I um, have this ongoing periodic series called Crossover Minute, where I take things that either stir in my heart or that I observe or that come to me in some different way that I feel like is interesting or important or helpful points to make, and I take either a very more formal or informal recording and post it, put it out there on social media or on the website or in whatever other means that I have an outlet to. And this video is going to be very informal. It's not produced, and it's definitely not, it's not even written out in outline form. So this is gonna be just be more straight talking. I'm gonna stutter, I'm gonna stumble over my words here. I can just tell you that right now. My intention for this is, I say crossover moment because this is probably gonna be more than a couple minutes, but I want to talk about boundaries. I want to talk about something that is such a vital and critical principle that is so universal, that operates on pretty much every level of life. And when I do these videos, sometimes the topics that come to me, and I want to put together this nice writing, and then speak it out and that type of thing. And then I put some of these things together in draft form, and I got several things waiting to talk about. But for me, the way I'm made up, it seems like things that are very critical or that God is dealing with me in the moment is usually my best. I'm in my better element when sharing that. And this topic about boundaries is something that God is interrupting me with, like putting like 2 inches from my face and forcing me to confront. So I'm just going to be very humble and honest, with myself and with you all in the process of this. Boundaries, God set boundaries back in creation. One of the most distinct boundaries that from early on, besides so many others, is the land and the waters, the boundary, the line, in different ways the Bible talks about, between the land and the waters. He said that he would set a bound, he would set a line, or depending on your translation and that type of thing. But he set a bound or a boundary so that the waters would not overcome the land. And it's kind of interesting when you go to the beach and you see the water meet the land. You don't see like a carved line, like a deep crevice or a crack in the earth or something like that, or it's not like a bowl, like the water's in a bowl. The waters aren't like forced, like he doesn't have like an edge that says, okay, I'm going to keep this big huge bowl here and the water's just going to sit in it. No, they overlap. Matter of fact, the land goes under the water and the water goes over the land. So there's actually some overlap there, So what it is that he has put something intrinsic in the waters and in the nature of the movement of the waters, that it keeps this boundary without being forced even, that it is obedient to its nature and to its purpose and its function. And so the water knows that as the tide rolls in, as it gets close to the rising of the land, it knows that at a certain point it has to duck under and roll back. And so it stays cyclic in its nature. And the beauty of the waters is that it has its own respect for its place and the land's place, but also the gentle overlap that they have near the beach. And sometimes the tide rises and sometimes it recedes, but it stays within a healthy place that ends up being a boundary. And there's a beautiful mesh between the two. And then there's a place where it's just water and just land. And the interesting thing about the land is that the land actually supports the water in the underbelly of the seabed or the ocean floor. And so I would like to take this picture and apply it to relationships, because I believe that we are in a culture and a day and time, and we have been for decades, growingly, increasingly, especially here in the West, where boundaries are at best blurred and at worst non-existent. We are in a me first, I first, self-gratification type culture, mentality, society, and then couple that with our upbringing in the educational system and some of the principles that are being portrayed and emphasized. Not only that, having broken homes, a lot of single parenting where the parents are either absentee fathers or just the parents are just so busy, if there's even both of them in the picture, and they're doing those things. And who is raising our kids? What is raising our kids? And we got our entertainment industry that is all but hideous, and earlier on, not just on an adult and teen level anymore. And so all these factors, in addition to the church, oftentimes, especially mainstream ministry, is teaching a very self-centered, me first type gospel, in the sense that God is always looking to, let's put it this way, the volume and quantity and percentage and weight of the preaching and teaching on God helping us and restoring us and renewing us, compared to us surrendering and worshiping Him and laying ourselves down, but denying self and picking up our cross daily and following Him, is out of balance. Because it's a two-way street. Every healthy relationship is a two-way street. And with God, He is not our servant. He is not our genie. We are supposed to be His servants. Now, that being said, He is amazingly gracious and healing and restorative and all that type of thing. But because we have swung the pendulum from early 1900s preaching of hellfire condemnation, and a lot more just focusing on our constructs to God, which is important and vital. That's first. We are worshipers and servants of God first, well, sons and daughters first. But that is our posture of surrender and our desperate need of His grace, and the cross, because of our dire sin. But the sin message was to a point of such over condemnation, and not just healthy conviction, and there was a neglect of healing and restoration, especially for those who have been disadvantaged and broken, abused, traumatized, that we began to recognize this in some way, shape, or form. But we swung the pendulum so far over to only talking about healing and restoration, what God was going to do for us, to a point to where we've cultivated a culture in a lot of places within the body of Christ and in the church, which is not always the body of Christ, because truly being a part of the body of Christ is your own personal surrender and walk with Jesus. But we've gotten it to a point to where we forgot to remember God's holiness and our obedience to Him, and our desperate need of worshiping Him and surrendering to Him, and exalting Him, and not just having Him exalting us per se. Now, I say that just to kind of give us some perspective, because there's a lot of well-meaning teaching and ministries and worship bands and different things like that focus on a lot of healing and restorative type, content and lyrics and things like that. And I get that. There's a place for that. We need it all. We need the full gospel. We don't just need one or the other. Well, anyway, little side shoot there. Back to my main point about relationships, though. I want to apply this to something that God is really dealing with me on. When you get started in a deepening relationship, good feelings feel good. They just do, I'm going to keep paralleling this to the ocean and the land. They say, too much of a good thing can harm, or whatever, and stuff like that. And it sounds cliche-ish, but it's true. But you think, well, we can kind of meander this and work this out, and we're just riding a wave, and enjoying this moment. And that's fine again, but what happens is if we don't pay attention to healthy boundaries, we're going to expect that wave to come off the ocean and keep surfing on the ground and well beyond its bounds, and it's unrealistic and it's unsustainable. Um, it's a type of situation where we we when we don't have that disposition of or that conscientiousness of healthy boundaries, we just want to surf all day, you know. We want to make that our primary mode of operation, ride those waves. But what happens is if we want to ride those waves out beyond the seashore, we start driving ourselves literally and figuratively into the ground, because we're then losing the water, and we're literally surfing on sand, and we're literally driving ourselves into the ground. And so the beauty of the wave in the ocean is that it is vast, deep, and amazing. It is vast, deep, and amazing. It is supposed to be that way. But it cannot be everything that it is supposed to be if we're trying to pull from it or ride it beyond its bounds. And so it's almost as if I see in a picture, this is just my own picture here, that the ocean with respect to relationships is like maybe the interpersonal affection and intimacy and connection and feeling for each other, and and that type of thing. And the land is kind of like the work that is required in our life, whether it be our vocation, whether it be ministry, whether it be our responsibilities, household, family, kids, bills, all those different types of things. The things that actually we have to work, kind of like, working the land, like literally, in the ocean, you don't work the ocean. You get to swim in the ocean and take boat rides and play in the ocean and all that type of stuff, and sunbathe, letting the waves kind of splash your legs and things like that or whatever. So, and in the relationships, especially in the beginning when you're spending more time together, if my nature is to have a little bit of an addictive nature sometimes when it comes to the things I love. And so if I start to get a little bit addicted to that extra time, then I start to become selfish, because now I'm focusing on, I want the next wave. I want the next surf coming. I don't want to get out of the ocean. I want to stay in here. And if I have to pull over into the land, I want to take some of the ocean. I want to take some of the ocean with me. And early on in relationships, and this again, universal principle, but because this can apply to anything that we love or just other aspects of life. But God is dealing with me on this, that Justin, you have to stay in context. There's a time and a place to have kind of the secluded time, or the moments of just relishing in connection and things like that. But there's a time and a place where we have to say, okay, it's time to work now. It's time to get out of the ocean, dry ourselves off, and we got some work to do. We got to maintain things here. We got responsibilities out here, and what that means is the ocean will always be there. And as a matter of fact, even though you're working the land, you still carry the ocean in your heart. You carry the memories. That it's going to be a next time. It's always there. It's in tandem. It doesn't just go away, And it makes the next time you go to the ocean that much more fond, because you had time to miss it. You had time to remember the good memories, and you had time to look forward to the next time, right? And so when people are dating, for example, when people are dating or getting to know each other and stuff like that, each person has their own responsibilities. They have their own dry ground time that they have to take care of. And if one or both people are trying to take too much ocean time, then there's just going to be neglect to the needs of that person's life. And that's where pressure and stress starts to build up, because although both of them love the ocean time together, one or both of them begin to feel the tug and the draw on the things that they're responsible for in the land, and the land starts crying out to them, I need you here. I need you here. There's some neglect. There's some things in the garden, in the fields that are drying up, that are getting eaten up by things that are not being tended and protected. There's some issues here. There's things that need to be worked here that can't be neglected. And so many times, some of us, including myself, maybe just get a little bit self-absorbed in that ocean time. While good intentions, as far as, well, I love the person, or, well, I love being with them. Okay, that's nice, but there's selfishness in that if you're not respecting the whole, the land and not just the ocean, And so the other thing to remember when it comes to the ocean and the land is that we actually spend more time on the land than the ocean. It's not realistic for us physically, whatever word you want to use, in the natural realm, to spend most of the time in the ocean. Now, obviously, we have ships and we have, sailors and all that stuff like that. I'm talking about general life and population. I'm not talking people that actually do have a life or a career or of travel or ocean, anything to do with the ocean. I'm just talking about in general, by general population here. We spend most of our time, and then we look forward to the times we get to go to the beach or get to go to the ocean or swimming or whatever, that type of thing. And I think in the beginnings of relationships, when there's a lot of infatuation and just discovering the love and the passion for each other and things like that, that's easy to forget. And the difficult part is that, both people may begin to have that tug or that conviction, or they know, they're aware, but they're just kind of, forbearing it. They're kind of like, pushing it aside. The difficult part can be when one person starts to say, you know what, I got to put my foot down. I need to take care of my land better than I have been. The difficult part is when the other person hasn't come to that resolve quite yet, because they're still, oh no, just one more wave. That's where there can become, well, wait a second here. What are you doing here? I've got to take care of this. Don't you really care about me or love me or respect me? Don't you care about my life? And the other person's just saying, yeah, I do, but can we have just one more wave? This person can then, their selfishness begins to be like a control on them, almost like a reverse fishing, where we're trying to pull them back in the ocean, say, come on. And this person says, no, I've got to take care of these things. And by the way, don't you have some things over there in your land to take care of too? And so this person their selfishness begins to be, convey itself like a bit of an immaturity. And this person's like, okay, you know what? This is starting to be frustrating, because I've got to start handling these things and more attentively or better, or just now or whatever. And that's where you start to see a divergence. And so this is something that we can take time to think about, where we are in these pictures, when have we been either one of these things, and if we're in a relationship, what can we do with where we're at to be, first of all, where we need to be healthily, and the more that we are both operating healthily, the closer we're able to be together. Because if one keeps wanting to stay stuck in the ocean and the other's in the land, there's divergence. Look at the distance here. They were swimming in the ocean, having a great time or whatever, and the one says, I need to get out, I got stuff to do, and the other's like, yeah, I kind of do too, but one more wave, or one more swim, or whatever. And this person knows they need to take care of things, so they start, well, look at the distance here. There's separation there. But if both people are operating healthily, okay, let's get out. Yeah, we need to. Then look at this. Even when they're working the land, look how close they still are, because they're able to walk together and stay close. And there's intimacy in work too. Intimacy doesn't just mean we stop everything we're doing and we have a great time together personally, prayer or physically or whatever else, or laughing together in just doing nothing, in our ocean. That's intimacy, is being close, whether we're in the ocean or on the land. We could be working our to the sweat of our brow, working our tail ends off in the house, or working our jobs, or saying, you go there, I'm doing this, and I'll meet you back here, and we'll do this part together, and you do that outside, and I'll do this inside. And there's intimacy in that because we're close. We're working closely, and we got the same mindset, the same vision, the same understanding, and we're operating in it, whether we're in the water or not. It's just a different outward expression of intimacy. But intimacy is not just sitting together and being romantic. Matter of fact, you can experience romantic feelings without expressing them. There can be a romantic feeling working together without actually expressing romance in that work. And so I think that between just the way we have become in this culture and society, the way we're brought up, the way we're taught, and also, of course, as many of us are aware of, the growing over the decades sexualization of our culture and all this, it's like everything is curving us into this selfish, flesh-gratifying version of relationships and intimacy and things like that, that doesn't see the whole picture, that doesn't see responsibility and see work and all that type of thing. And if we are not willing to see this, if we're not willing to see this and then take ownership of where we are and where we can grow in, we will never change. And if we don't change, we can't have lasting, healthy relationships. They're always either going to be so frustrating, or they're just going to end. They're just going to always end. I'm here to share just these thoughts, in hopes that it can encourage some people or help them to see some things that they need to work through, as well as just a way of saying this is an area that I've struggled in. This is the area that I need to grow in myself, because I can be that ocean person. That person who just wants to keep swimming or surfing a little bit longer. Now, I'm not saying I don't have any kind of work ethic and I don't take care of my business, because I do. It's not like that. I'm very much a worker, and very much focused, and I keep lists. My lists turn into goals, and I have ABC and things I want to do, and I get them done. But in the context of a relationship and the time spent, I think one more thing that can be helpful for us to remember in relationships, especially early on, and especially just overall on this side of marriage, on the front side of marriage, dating or courting, is that time spent together, if you're spending the time together, if you're spending too much time together, then just by nature of the volume of time, we are beginning to push into people's dry land work time, because we only have so many hours in a day, in a week, in a month, and we've got to get certain things done that take a certain amount of time every day, week, and month with our responsibilities, which means we only have X amount of pocket of time for fun things, or for the casual things, the ocean time, so to speak, as I'm kind of putting it like this. And that I would call dating or courting. The time when the people are spending that time set apart for each other, with each other, whether it be with friends or in public, or over dinner, or having prayer and Bible study, or whatever the rotation of things to do, to have that personal time together, where they're not necessarily working and doing other things. They're giving each other relatively undivided attention. But if the two people are meeting up too much, then it's going to run off into the time they need to be allotted for their other responsibilities. Now, what I've observed is that, and this is something that, again, I also need to work in, is that if the two people are deciding to spend more time with each other than, such as meeting up almost every day, or such as just high volumes of time throughout the week, or whatever, or per any given day, to where it is going to spill off into the dry land time, then they are approaching another boundary when it comes to marriage. Because marriage, you spend all the time, so much, most of the time together, right? Except for your work and whatever, stuff like that. And in the context of marriage, we definitely know that you can't just spend a bunch of ocean time when if you're spending 16 hours in any given day together on a weekend, or and then another 7 hours on a work day or whatever, you know it can't be all ocean time. It's not dating anymore. You still carve out date night. You still carve out time for intimacy spiritually and physically. But you know that, okay, now not only is my away time, when I'm working and doing things like that, but when we're together, a lot of this time has to be work. We got household things to do inside and out. We got a cleaning. We got kids to take care of. We got bills to pay. We got just stuff to do. And so if two people are going to spend extra time together beyond dating, then what that means is for that to even be sustainable, they actually have to begin to function like married couple, where they have to say, okay, all of our time together that we're spending, if we're going to do this, even though it's crossing a boundary, a marital boundary as far as quantity of time, but if we're going to actually try to even make this work with this much time together every day or whatever, or all these hours and stuff, then you know what? We're getting into dry land territory here, because we can't spend all of it in the ocean. So the alternative is we have to have a vision here. When you come over or when we get together or whatever, I got stuff to do, and I know you got stuff to do too. What are we going to do when we can't spend the ocean time together, when we got stuff on our plate because we're spending so much time together? What are we going to do? And the two actually have to almost make a plan. Well, you got stuff to do in and out of the house. I can pitch in on this too. I also got my own stuff I bring. Or, the point is that the two people have to actually begin to think like a married couple and actually operate like that, to make that time, that extra time, all that extra time work healthily, and then for them to have healthy time in the ocean, the interpersonal fellowship and just, the undivided attention type thing, for that to even be sustainable if they're going to spend that kind of time together. And I understand everybody's different as far as their quantity of time they're spending together. And so what that means is, now I say that, and then I also say, but is that not crossing another boundary that is supposed to be reserved for marriage? Marriage is all the extra time together, and there's boundaries in marriage, because again, like we just talked about, besides boundaries in dating, boundaries in marriage says, hey, all this time we now have together and that we're actually devoted to each other, we have to have boundaries here. We can't always be playing in the ocean during our marriage time. We have to do work, we have responsibilities, we have to share loads of responsibilities in the house and the kids and now so that's almost a whole separate conversation as far as boundaries in marriage, because there has to be that time. And what about our own personal time with God? And so there's different things that we have to manage in marriage too that also have healthy boundaries. But on the outside, on the front side, before marriage, the boundaries of the marital arena have to be protected in the sense of how much time we spend together, and what kind of interaction are we having, and how late are we, and things like that, as well as, whatever else and that goes along with marriage that belongs there. So these are things, hopefully these thoughts are helpful to process and think about, because this type of stuff is not being talked about by and large in and outside the church, and it's just not the message of our culture and our society. It's off the radar of it feels like a generation or two of people, because it has not been a fundamental part of the last couple generations of upbringing, just by nature of our circumstances here. And that's a bad thing, because we're missing out on a key healthy aspect of healthy living, healthy relationship, healthy marriage, healthy families, and healthy lifestyles beyond relationships. And so my prayer is that these principles would be an instrument of righteousness to really work in our hearts. Me, please, the deep of my heart and soul, to see this, to be honest with it, and then to own it by loving it, by giving ourselves to boundaries, by loving the boundaries, loving the whole picture of it, loving and trusting the principles of boundaries, that they work. God's principles always work. He said it this way for a reason, not just to be restrictive and mean. No, it's just a beautiful harmony. It's a beautiful flow. It's a symphony. It's a beautiful mesh where it works together as this amazing artistic piece that operates that he has built in the principles for it to operate beautifully, where he can almost sit back while being in the middle of it at the same time, and it works itself. Again, the beach does not have like this big crevice or ditch or bowl cup that says this is the boundary. No, he puts it in. He puts it intrinsically within the nature of how he made it. And the one last little point, like we said early on, is that it's interesting that the land actually goes under the ocean and supports it. And so the more we take care of the land, the more that we take care of the work and the responsibilities of our life and that type of thing, we live responsibly with God and with our responsibilities and stuff like that, the more that land will come under and hold and support and carry the ocean, carry the beautiful waters. The ocean can't support the land. It's not the nature, it's not the way it's made, it's not possible. It doesn't support the land. Now, it feeds the land. It nourishes the land because God will cause it to rise and then to rain gently and beautifully. And that's where that beautiful, just that touch and the raindrops of intimacy and sweetness and fellowship soften the land and cause it to be nourished and refreshed and not dry and hard and barren, so that we can truly experience even a sweetness of that intimacy, a taste of that intimacy in our work together, in our work of our lives, and that we're working for and with each other. But the ocean was not meant to carry the land, but the land was made to carry the ocean. And the more that we work the land and respect the land, the more that when we dive in the ocean, we can appreciate how our hard work is carrying this ocean experience with each other. And I think that if we allow ourselves to love that, if we allow ourselves to give ourselves to that, it will run itself. We won't ever have to tell the ocean, stop here, stop here. It will operate. God didn't have to stand there at the beach with his hands on his hips and say, ocean, up, that was a little too far. No, you're not supposed. No, it's built in. It's built in. We can get to a place where we are allowing this to be built into us, where we have to give ourselves to it. We have to love this. We have to love this whole picture, and we have to trust it, that this is the best way, not doing what we want every time. When we're in the ocean, we can do what we want in the ocean with respect to what can be done in the ocean, and same thing with the land. But we can't pull the ocean into the land. And by contrast, we also can't pull the land into the ocean, but that's a little bit easier to understand that, or to do that, than, because ocean is more fun and free, land is more work, so it's easy to be fun and free in the ocean and not say, hey, let's work in the ocean, so what are your thoughts between you and yourself and God and maybe your companion, or friends or family? What do you think? What do you think God is calling out to you or highlighting to you? I see very, very clearly a lot of things that God is really trying to show me and give me the opportunity to grow in, to change, to work in. I'm excited for that because I want that. It's unfortunate that that sometimes we don't see something clearly until it gets to a brink, or and it gets to points of frustration and things like that. And but God can use that as a wake-up call, because sometimes we just are blinded by our selfishness, or our, like I said, riding the wave. We just get caught up, and we need a pause to say, wait, stop, Justin, what are you doing? Hold on a second now. Get back to your healthy boundaries. Get back to your healthy principles. But yeah, I do pray that this is something that can really be enlightening, and it can be revolutionary. We don't have to stay the way we've been. I don't care how old we are or how old we get. We can always, with a softened heart and a humbleness, to see even in the areas that we don't want to admit, or that we can be selfish. If we can allow ourselves to be humble enough and seeking God and saying, God, I really do want to see this clearly. Even though I have a hard time seeing in this area, or even though whatever our even though is, I want this more than, despite myself, I want this. I want to be different. I want to change. And if we are determined in our faith, in our pursuit of God enough, and I'm not saying it's on us, because it's God's grace, but we have to be willing. We have to want this. We have to really want to be changed. He can break through to us. He can break through our blindness, our selfishness, our pride, or whatever else that blinds us. And we can have these breakthrough moments. We can have these breakthrough revelations that actually change our life. They change our life in that area. And my thing is, I wish I didn't have layers of selfishness that God has to break through sometimes to finally get through to me, like 2 or 3 or 4 chips at it until it finally breaks through. Because sometimes I have an addictive nature about myself that I have to consciously work against and lay back and lay aside. But it gets to a point to where if my heart and my passion for God really is sincere and genuine and pursuing, not just feeling, but pursuing Him, then even despite my selfishness, He's able to melt through that and get through to me eventually. And I've seen it time and time and again in my life. I wish it was quicker. I wish when He first spoke to me, I would get it right then, or that I would be ready to just surrender to it right then. How many times have you been convicted or tugged on by God, and then finally you're like, you know what, I give in. You're right. I'm just holding on to something I need to let go. I'm holding on to this selfish feeling that I just need to put in God's hands so I can be, it's our human nature. We all do it. We all do it. And I'm just confessing it before you. We all do that. It's part of our human nature. It's part of our sin nature. It's part of our flesh. It just, we want to be addictive. We want to be self-gratifying. That's the selfishness of sin. The sin nature that we're still connected to in the flesh, even though our spirit, those of us who have really given ourselves to Jesus, and He has promised a regeneration in our spirit man, but that just helps tender our conscience and our pursuit of Him spiritually. But we still got this flesh nature that we're working through, and that wants what it wants, as long as it wants it, as much as it wants, and so it needs beaten down and disciplined, so to speak, figuratively speaking, not personally and physically, guys. Not with cutting, not with burning, not with self-harm and things like that. When I say flesh nature, I'm talking about the cravings. I'm not talking about harming our physical bodies. Because on the other flip side of all this, you are precious and you are beautiful. Every bit of you, spirit, soul, and body, you are precious and so valuable. And this is not a time for self-condemnation and self-harm. This is a time to be illuminated by these things and say, oh, light bulbs coming off. Oh, I have opportunity. I have open doors to see how to make a change in this life, not to condemn ourselves for being bad like this, or being off the mark, or being out of bounds, but rather saying, oh, this is an opportunity to grow. This is, take it in a positive light, not a condemnational light, but something that's encouraging and inspirational. So all that said, I truly, truly pray that this can be so helpful, encouraging to anyone listening, and enlightening, inspirational, and doesn't have to, it could be about anything in life, not just relationships. It could be about your hobbies or your interest or your work or whatever. Where do I set boundaries to where it's balanced and I'm not overdoing something, I'm not obsessing, or I'm not being selfish in my infatuation over something, I pray that we would see this, and that we would allow God's Spirit to transform us in these areas, and that we would love boundaries, and we would trust God's way, trust His boundaries, trust the results, and that it's more satisfying and fulfilling to do it His way than ours anyway. And it's sustainable. It will last. It will be able to last forever. That's how healthy relationships endure, because they stay in healthy principles and healthy boundaries, and the enemy can't touch that. He cannot, when we stay healthy, the enemy's like, he's out of bounds. He's out of bounds. And he's just wanting us to go out of bounds so that he can mess around with us, you know. But if we just stay in bounds, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. And we can keep each other accountable to that. I say that like I'm talking to somebody. I'm just letting you, you know, talk a little first person and stuff with you. So anyway, I bless you in the name of Jesus. May you be inspired and encouraged. Thank you for allowing me this time with you to sit and to humble my heart. I got some work to do. I've got some things to approach here, and I highly encourage taking time if you feel like. There's some excellent books. There's a series of books on boundaries, for example, and there's other good resources. Or if you find someone to kind of mentor you or work through and talk about these things with, someone you trust, someone who's, you know, can be a good listener and understanding, that's not going to just coddle you, but it's going to, you know, lovingly keep you accountable and saying, okay, you can grow in that area, and pray for you in that. I encourage that. But at least get with God on these things if you see some areas that you can work in or grow and improve in, and then communicate those things to your loved ones, especially if you have a partner, significant other, a companion or a wife or a husband, or, you know, communicate with them that God is showing you something in these areas and that you want to grow and that you're working on growing them. That will probably encourage them. You know, maybe they'll want to do some of that with you or something. Either way, let's do something with this. Let's never hit plateaus in this life, no matter how old we get. I know as we get older, it's easy to stay in the same groove and say, well, that's just the way I am. That's the way I've been. I don't know that I'll ever change, and things like that. Let's not say that. Let's say, you know what? I'm a lifelong learner. I'm every day, I'm every season of my life available to the potter, and I'm the clay. And I'm not going to become dried, hardened clay. I'm going to stay softened and moistened by the washing of the water of his word and by his spirit, by my love for him and my intimacy with him. And I'm going to allow my heart to continually be pliable all throughout my life. Can we do that? Can we do that? I know it's a little bit counter nature, and I know it's definitely counterculture, and we have these sayings and like, yeah, it's just, that's the way he is. Can we not give ourselves to that and just give up? Can we say, yes, I can change? 20 years from now, I can really be a very different person than I am today, no matter how old I am right now. Can we do that? Isn't there an excitement and a freshness to life that as we grow older, that we still have all this new life to experience within, not just externally, but within? Let's do that together. I bless you in the name of Jesus. Thank you for taking this time, and until next time, this is Justin. Crossover Minute extended into about 40 of them for a moment with you.